It's 6:45 a.m. The kitchen is quiet except for the faint hum of the coffee maker. But inside this house, tension has been brewing longer than the coffee. For 7 years, this mom has carried the same morning routine. Breakfast, backpacks, missing shoes, the mad rush to beat the school bell. But today, something feels different. Her husband, unemployed for months, is still asleep. Again. And while she's trying to juggle her job, their 16-year-old's doctor appointment, and the endless school prep, one question keeps looping in her head. Is it really too much to ask him to get their 7-year-old ready for school once? She sends him a text before bed, polite, direct. Can you wake up without me calling and get Jack to school on time? If not, I'll ask a neighbor. It should have been simple, but his reply changed everything. He said he could, if she laid out their son's underwear and clothes first, down to the socks. That was the moment something inside her snapped, because this wasn't about clothes anymore. It was about effort, respect, and what it means to actually share a life, not just a house. When her phone buzzed with his reply, she thought maybe he'd just confirm. A simple, "Got it," or "Don't worry, I'll handle it." But instead, she found a message that made her stop mid-scroll. "I can if you could please put out a pair of underwear and clothes that match, fit him, and which he'll wear, at the foot of the bed so I can find them." She stared at the screen. For a moment, she wasn't even angry, just tired, because this wasn't a new problem. It was just a new excuse. Her husband, who hadn't had a full-time job in months, still acted like the mornings were her responsibility. Even when she was driving 2 hours away for their daughter's medical appointment, he couldn't just handle it. Then, as if to defend himself, he sent more messages. "Jack always wants to go barefoot in Crocs. He won't eat the right lunch unless you pack it. He only listens when you do things your way." Each sentence felt like another deflection, another reason he couldn't do what every other parent somehow managed to figure out. And beneath his words, she could almost hear what he wasn't saying out loud. "If it's not easy, it's not my problem." That was the moment frustration turned into something else, resentment, because she realized she wasn't just parenting 2 kids. She was parenting her husband, too. By the time morning came, she'd barely slept. Not because of the doctor's appointment or the long drive ahead, but because that single text kept replaying in her mind. When she walked past the bedroom, the lights were still off. Her husband was still in bed, scrolling through his phone like it was any other morning. She took a deep breath. "You really can't find your son's clothes without me?" she asked. He sighed, as if she was being unreasonable. "It's not about that," he said. "You know he only listens to you. Every time I try, he argues. It's easier if you just lay things out." She froze. Easier. That word felt like a punch, because nothing about her mornings was easy. Not getting 2 kids out the door, not managing the bills, not holding a family together while he floated between jobs. She wanted to scream, but instead, her voice came out steady. "He's 7 years old. You're his father. You've been here his whole life. You should know what fits him." He shrugged. "You're better at it." That was it. The sentence that said everything without saying anything. In that moment, she realized this wasn't about clothes or school lunches. It was about the silent weight she'd been carrying for years. The invisible list of responsibilities he never saw but always expected her to handle. It wasn't a partnership anymore. It was a pattern, and she was done being the only adult holding it together. Later that morning, while she packed the car for her daughter's appointment, she could hear him inside, still moving slowly, still not hurrying, still acting like the morning wasn't his to own. The cereal box stayed open on the counter. The backpack lay empty on the floor. And their 7-year-old wandered around half-dressed, waiting for someone, anyone, to take charge. She stopped in the doorway, watching. It wasn't chaos that broke her. It was the calm. The kind of calm that only comes from someone who's used to letting others do the heavy lifting. When she reminded him again about the schedule, that Jack needed to be at school by 7:15, he just said, "Relax. I've got it." But she knew he didn't. He never did. That's when it hit her. She wasn't just exhausted from doing everything. She was exhausted from caring more than he did. Every little thing she'd done over the years, the packed lunches, the clean clothes, the reminders, the emotional labor, had built an invisible mountain between them. And now she was standing on top of it, looking down at a man who didn't even see it existed. It wasn't anger anymore. It was sadness, a quiet kind that comes when love turns into resentment. The kind that doesn't scream or fight back. It just gives up. She got into the car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, and for the first time, she didn't text to check if he'd managed to get their son to school. Because deep down, she already knew the answer. That night, after the long drive and the silence that followed, she did something she'd never done before. She opened her phone, went to Reddit, and poured her story into a post. No filters, no perfect words, just truth. She titled it simply, "Ita for expecting my husband to get our 7-year-old ready for school without my help?" Within hours, the post exploded. Hundreds of comments, then thousands. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone thought they were right. Some defended her, calling her a saint for holding the family together while her husband refused to step up. Others accused her of publicly shaming him instead of fixing things privately. But the loudest voices were the ones in between, the people who saw the bigger story. They weren't talking about laundry or school drop-offs anymore. They were talking about emotional labor, that invisible work women do every single day to keep families functioning. One comment cut through the noise. "He's not asking for help. He's asking for a manager. You're not his boss. You're his partner." And he forgot the difference. She read that line over and over again, because it wasn't just about her husband. It was about every moment she'd felt unseen, unappreciated, or quietly dismissed. Her story had gone viral, not because it was unique, but because it was painfully familiar. Behind every "can you just" or "you're better at it," there was a deeper truth, that too many people mistake care for control and laziness for love. As the comments poured in, something strange happened. The noise of the internet started to feel quieter than her own thoughts. Each post, each message, each shared opinion only made one thing clearer. This wasn't just a bad week. This was the life she'd been quietly surviving for years. When one commenter asked, "Other than frustration, uncertainty, and financial instability, what exactly does he bring to the marriage?" She froze. Because for the first time, she didn't have an answer. They'd been married for 20 years. They had a home, 2 kids, and a shared history full of small moments that once meant everything. But lately, those moments felt like memories, fading under the weight of unspoken resentment and unfinished arguments. He wasn't a bad person. He wasn't cruel. He was just absent, physically there, emotionally gone. Every time she tried to talk about it, the conversation ended the same way, with him saying she was overreacting, that she needed to stop making everything an issue. But that's the thing about relationships. They rarely end with one big explosion. They fade in 1,000 quiet ways. And this, the simple question of getting a 7-year-old ready for school, had just exposed every hidden crack in their marriage. It wasn't about mornings anymore. It was about partnership, and the painful truth that she'd been carrying it alone. The next morning, the house was silent again. No arguments, no tension, just that heavy, empty quiet that fills the air when 2 people stop trying. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her Reddit post one last time. Thousands of strangers had shared their thoughts, but one comment stayed with her. If your partner can watch you drown and still ask what's for breakfast, it's time to swim alone. She stared at that line until her eyes blurred, because deep down she already knew This wasn't just a bad chapter. It was the end of the book. In her follow-up comment, she admitted what she hadn't said out loud. We're realistically moving toward divorce. After 20 years, it's a process. And that's the part most people never see. Not the yelling, not the split, but the slow unraveling of two lives once built together. Every photo on the wall, every shared password, every inside joke, all of it now belonged to before. Still, there was one thing keeping them under the same roof: their kids. She wanted her 16-year-old to finish school in the same district and for her 7-year-old to have some sense of normalcy. So they stayed, not as lovers, not even really as friends, but as two people trying not to make the wreckage worse. She told herself it was temporary, just until graduation. But as she looked across the table at the man she used to dream with, she realized something painful. Sometimes the hardest part of leaving isn't walking away. It's accepting that the person you love, Ed, stopped walking beside you a long time ago. Weeks later, life in the house went on, at least on the surface. The same walls, the same morning routines, the same silence. But something had shifted forever. She stopped waiting for him to change. Stopped hoping he'd suddenly decide to share the weight she'd been carrying alone. And in that quiet acceptance, she found something she hadn't felt in years: peace. Because the truth is, relationships don't fall apart because someone forgets to do the dishes or pick out clothes for a 7-year-old. They fall apart because one person stops trying. Love can survive distance, stress, and even failure, but it can't survive indifference. She realized that effort isn't measured in grand gestures. It's in showing up, day after day, even for the small things. Because that's what love really is, not just being there, but being present. And as the internet moved on to its next viral debate, her story stayed behind. A quiet reminder that partnership isn't about perfection. It's about two people carrying life together, even when it's messy. So if you ever find yourself asking whether you're expecting too much, remember this: you're not asking for help. You're asking for partnership. And if someone can't give that, the problem isn't your expectations, it's their effort. Because in the end, love isn't about who wakes up first. It's about who shows up at all.